Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. Today I got a fun and exciting episode for you guys today because we're going over Supermodel Dojo, doing a full setup guide and tutorial on how to get Model 3 emulation running on your PC with the new Supermodel Dojo. Because I gave you guys the news on Wednesday that this had been updated and it was basically the de facto way to play Model 3 on your computer. Everyone in the comments asked for a tutorial because I asked you guys if you wanted to see one, and ask and you shall receive. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. And if you do get stuck, I do have that Patreon Emulation Night School tier where you can get custom chat support from me if you need it. But all you need to do is go over to the Supermodel GitHub page, which I will link in the description below. That's where you're going to get all of the files you need. And if you're not aware and you didn't see the first video, this is going to be emulating the entirety of the Sega Model 3 arcade board. It is home to some of the best games Sega ever made, and this Supermodel Dojo version is basically a front-end UI configuration tool and other aspects that's going to allow you to run the Supermodel emulator that is made by different people, because by default Supermodel is a command line argument emulator, which means you have to launch everything with command line arguments in a DOS prompt. But here you're going to have an entire front end to be able to do absolutely everything. It's also going to allow for some games to be networked online so you can play against opponents in different places or even locally in two different instances of Supermodel running, which is absolutely awesome and something that people have definitely been looking forward to. I will show you where the networking tab is, but you do need to have a decent understanding of networking IPs and ports to be able to get this to run. So it's one of those things, your mileage may definitely vary. But honestly, Supermodel is so incredible, and I'm so happy to see it getting improved not only on the emulation side, but also on the front end side. And I think Dojo is going to make this emulator a lot more accessible to a lot more people, and that's all I ever want. So if you go over to the GitHub page, on the right hand side you're going to see releases. That is where you're going to want to click to get the newest download, and you'll see here it's going to give you Supermodel Dojo Preview 4. You're going to want to go ahead and click on that as well. Now this will definitely update, and you can basically just download new versions and follow the setup guide. I don't think anything's going to change whatsoever. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, you're going to see Supermodel Dojo Preview 4.zip. That is what you're going to want to grab when you actually come over to the GitHub page. Don't grab an old version of this. Preview 4 is the one you want to work with for this tutorial. And just as a note, please don't skip ahead in this video. So many times people leave comments asking why I didn't cover something, and I give them a timestamp and tell them where it is. You can install Supermodel Dojo to whatever folder you want. Just go ahead and pick a folder, put the zip inside of it, and unpack that zip. Once you're done with the zip, you can delete it if you want. You can leave it there. It really doesn't matter. This isn't an installation process. It's an unzipping process. So just go ahead and put it in whatever folder you'd like. The first thing we need to do is definitely get games into Supermodel, so go ahead into the ROMs folder and copy in whatever games you want that you definitely legally own. They should all be in zip format. You'll see here, do not unpack those. You want to leave them zipped up or else they will not work. So put whatever games you want in the ROMs folder, and then when you actually launch dojo.exe, every game you put in there that is correct will show up in the Model 3 games library list. If it doesn't show up, that means you either forgot the files or it is a bad dump, because it will check for them. But whatever games you put in and are going to be ready to run are going to show up in the game library, and for some reason right now it doesn't do it alphabetically. It just kind of puts them in as to however they want. Hopefully in a new version they'll at least be able to go from A to Z, just so it makes it a little bit easier to find what you're trying to run. But if you click any game, you'll see start game, set controls, open replay file, start training mode, host netplay session, and join netplay session. So those are going to be the options off the top, and you can see you can even move the window around within the Supermodel Dojo executable in and of itself, which is a really nice touch. You can kind of move things where you want them to. And we're basically halfway there, but the first thing I want to talk about is widescreen support in Supermodel Dojo, because that is what everyone loves about the Supermodel emulator, and everyone always asks how to get the best widescreen support and the best resolution bump out of something like this, because we can play the games like Virtua Fighter 3 Team Battle in 4:3, and I really do like that aspect ratio, but everyone wants to see it done widescreen. So if you come up here to settings, it's going to bring up everything you need, and if you hit command, you're going to get a command reference or hotkey list for everything Supermodel can do. Definitely familiarize yourself with this, especially the save and load state feature. You're going to want to use that a lot when you're playing around, especially if you have to get up and come back to your game, because of course arcade games do not save. Now if you click settings, the first thing that's going to open up is graphics, and you'll see here by default pretty much everything that is checked should be checked. The one thing you can play around with is native refresh. If you check this, it's going to run at 57.524 Hz, the native Model 3 refresh rate. You will need a multi-sync monitor or something like a FreeSync monitor to do that. If you want to V-Sync it, you can as well. But you'll see here with widescreen and wide background, this is what you get, and it's also your first sound sample. Go ahead and listen. I'll come back and tell you exactly how to get that done.
Select your Viper.
Not only does it sound good, it looks absolutely incredible in 16:9 with an internal rendering resolution bump, but you do need to dial those in, so in the next clip I will show you exactly how to get that done. Just remember that you want to maintain an aspect ratio that would be 16:9 if you're going widescreen. So if you want to bump the resolution up to HD, you want to be 1920 by 1080. If you want to go to 4K and your system can handle it, you're going to want to go to the proper 4K resolution, both in the horizontal and vertical aspect, to make sure that the aspect ratio actually is maintained. So you'll see here you can change the X and Y resolution. For HD, you type in 1920 by 1080. If you want to run it full screen, you can run it full screen, but make sure widescreen and wide backgrounds are checked, or else you're not going to actually have those wide backgrounds and things are going to be distorted. Now the other thing you really want to need to know about is the actual PowerPC frequency. This is the clock speed of the virtual chip that is being emulated, because Model 3 came out in Step 1, Step 2, and Step 3 revisions, and some games can show a little bit of graphical corruption or otherwise have issues at the stock speed of 50 megahertz. So if you find any games that aren't working correctly, go ahead and jump this up by 10 megahertz increments, hit enter, and then go ahead and try to run the game again. You're going to have to adjust this every once in a while. Something like Sega Rally 2 can be sensitive to having too low or too high of a CPU clock speed when you're actually running it, and you'll definitely know you're going to get bad graphical corruption if the clock speed is incorrect. So just remember, up it by 10 steps as far as the megahertz are concerned. Go from 50 to 60 to 70 to 80 to 90 and wait and run the game, and once you see everything looks correct, you can just go ahead and leave it there. But if other games start getting issues because the clock speed is too high, just dial it back. It's the type of thing, keep a notebook next to you, leave a little notepad open on your computer and type in what works for what. For the most part, I feel like Sega Rally is the only game that I usually see issues running it at 50 megahertz, but your results may definitely vary depending on what game you try. But that is something you need to know for Supermodel 3 emulation. The stock clock speed of 50 megahertz is not going to be perfect for every single game, because Model 3 really is multiple different motherboards with different specs that are all based upon this same architecture. So just keep that in mind and you'll definitely won't have any issues whatsoever. Now on the audio tab, leave everything as is, but if you think the sound effects are a little bit too high, you can dial back the actual sound volume. Now the thing that trips most people up is the control system here. If you want to see every controller plugged into your system that Supermodel Dojo can use and what the default bindings are, just go ahead and set C controls, and here you'll be able to see exactly what every single type of game has for controls, as well as what it's already bound to. It'll also give you a listing of all of the controllers plugged in. Now if you hit set controls, this is where Supermodel can be a little bit difficult for people. Go through this menu, pay attention, go ahead and bind the controls to whatever you want if you want to change them, and if you screw up, the good thing is you can just run it again. That's always important to know, because I feel like this gets people more than anybody else. There's also directions in the command line window, so definitely make sure you're paying attention when you're doing something like this so you don't make a mistake and have to go back and do it again. If you go back to the C Controls tab, you're going to be able to see the configuration for every single thing, including light gun games, which you're going to work on the mouse by default. So definitely pay attention to that, because there are racing games, there are light gun games, there are fighting games, and there's going to be different controls for each. And just so you know, you can scroll down and see all of the available controllers in this list as well, which you do want to keep track of. If you scroll down, you're going to see all of the direct input settings that you can use for the system, and it is based on direct input. If we move over to something like the Ocean Hunter here, this is a light gun game, but for the most part, every light gun game on Model 3 uses an analog controller, not actually a traditional raster-based light gun. So you can use a gun for IR, you can use Ascendant, you can use anything that is taking over the mouse controls. The left click is going to be your shoot, right click is going to be reload in games that require it, and you're going to be able to move the mouse in all the cardinal directions to be able to actually play the game. So much so that normally I turn off capture cursor, but you will see here the mouse is on screen. Now when you go widescreen, it can affect the actual tracking, but when you turn the mouse capture off and you just see the aiming reticle, everything is lined up 100%, and I'm just leaving mouse on here for a moment so you can see it, and I've already turned it off in the background. So now I am controlling this game via a mouse, and if I plug in my gun for IR, I'm going to be able to play that as well. So your mouse is going to be your input on all of the light gun games that are on Model 3, and it should be bound by default. Don't change the bindings on light gun games, else you're going to have to rebind it, and it takes a minute. But by default, most things are going to be set up for your controller or for your keyboard or for your mouse, and everything should just work, but you can definitely rebind from there. Now as far as the networking is concerned, this is a very difficult thing to quote unquote teach, because your IP address out, your port in and out, whether or not you need port forwarding, is all going to be down to your own networking setup. This is where you're going to enter all the networking information so you can join or go ahead and actually host a game. So go ahead and type the correct information in here. If you want a more in-depth tutorial on networking, leave me a comment down below, but I just want to get you guys up and running with Supermodel. And just so you know, it will by default record all of your gameplay sessions. I uncheck that because I don't want all that data hanging out in a folder, but if you want to go back into your replays, if you want to jump into training mode, leave that checked and go ahead and go through the hotkey commands so you understand exactly how to launch those like I showed you earlier in the video. But if you follow this tutorial, put all the files in the right places, dial in that resolution, the wide backgrounds and everything else, you can play every single Sega Model 3 game in 16:9 widescreen with HD or 4K internal rendering resolutions, and it's just going to work absolutely flawlessly. Now just so you know, I use an i9-12900K and a 3080 Ti on a system with 64GB of RAM, but it is my editing machine, and it used to feel new, but now it feels like it might be time for at least a partial upgrade from my actual professional work. So depending on the specs in your machine, your results on the internal rendering resolution bump may vary. But follow this and you'll be playing Supermodel today, and if you need any additional help, don't forget I have that extra tier on Patreon. But I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.